States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board Member Connolly, Board Member Durfee, Board Member Ritter, here. Board Member Kimmelchew, Board Member Teeter, Board Member Knuckles, Board Member Reynolds, here. Board Member Calderon,
Here.
Board Member Pittman,
Here.
Board Member Tryon, here. Okay, so we're not going to do a consent, and we're going to move straight into number 7, the public hearing for the North Valley Passenger Rail Strategic Plan.
Thank you. Good morning. Is this working? Can you hear me? There's usually a light that turns on. Yeah, so since we don't have a board quorum, we can't actually open an official public hearing, but we thought we could just present the material that we plan to present, and then if there were public people as a comment, it would be a formal public hearing, but we'd get the same input either way. That sounds good.
Sounds great. Thank you.
So we have several members of the project team joining us today. On the Zoom, we have Daniel Kraus of our consultant team at AECOM, and also Daniel Hartman. And then we have Michael Hannibit from the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority joining us as well. And so we put together a few PowerPoint slides to go through the revised draft strategic plan with you this morning. And so maybe we could bring those up. They're in the main agenda item folder at the very bottom. And this revised draft reflects the most recent info we received through the public comment period on the initial draft of the plan that was held in January into February of this year. And then the document's available on the website in both clean and redline versions as well on the northvalleyrail.org website. And so just want to point out, we're excited about reaching this point of nearing completion of the strategic plan. There's been a lot of coordination with the project team and key stakeholders and others over the last 4 years to get to this point. The key findings of the strategic plan sort of boil down to, the idea that service is possible to Chico, on the UP Valley subdivision. When we started this process, we weren't sure if that was going to be possible. We were looking at Oroville as well, and in conversations with Union Pacific Railroad, it appears that that's very, very likely feasible to provide service up to Chico. The strategic plans identified an initial starter service with 4 round trips to be implemented in the midterm within the next 10 years. So we didn't want to come forth with a strategy to implement service beyond that. We think it would be good to get it done within 10 years rather than longer. Then we found that, the trip basically from Chico to Midtown SAC is going to be about 90 minutes, which is directly comparable with the driving time there. That was an exciting finding of the plan. And then also just looking at fares, they're roughly going to be anywhere from like $25 to $35 for Chico to Sacramento, which is comparable to existing bus prices for like the Route 3 thruway, Greyhound and things like that. So with that, we've got a couple slides. We can maybe go to that. We're getting some curveballs here this morning.
Sorry. Is this the slide you want?
That's the one, yeah, perfect, thank you. So, again, the strategic plan, it's kind of synthesizing the work that we've did throughout the last 3 years. The key elements, I'm going to go sort of full screen presentation mode. Anyway, so the key elements of this revised draft strategic plan, we have a chapter on the community and stakeholder engagement, kind of providing all those details. And then a key chapter on service and operations planning, which has information on the route alignment, those stations. It has the station visualizations that we'll review, and the initial service plan, bus connections, information on safety and security, those sorts of things. Another key section is the infrastructure improvement section, where we have information on the station layover facilities, the corridor improvements that we expect to be required, as in like track improvements, and also the cost estimate. And finally, sections on ridership, care strategy, funding and implementation strategy, and then sort of conclusions and next steps are all in there. Slide, please. And then before I turn it over to Mr. Daniel Kraus of the consultant team, just wanted to highlight our public engagement process that we've had the last 3 years. We've done a lot. We've had 2 different virtual community meetings. We had 150 people attend the first one, 80 attend the second one. A lot of input through those meetings. We also did 6 pop-up workshops at various community events, Ridley for Dia de los Muertos Festival, and Orville, the African and
Black History Month.
Black History Month, yeah, thank you. It's a long, we've also had 5 different project development team meetings, lots of coordination meetings with Union Pacific Railroad staff, Caltrans staff, Joaquin Regional Rail Commission, and Joint Powers Authority staff. We did a community survey about a year ago where we got about 500 responses to that. That's been sort of integrated into the revised draft strategic plan as well. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we had an initial draft plan released for public review back in February, and we got some additional comments there. So it's been a pretty robust public outreach process that's really informed the development. And I'm going to turn over to Daniel Kraus, and he's going to go through in more detail some of these key elements. And you've probably seen some of these before, but maybe this is a refresher course. There is some additional.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So I just want to talk about kind of how we constructed our service plan for the North Valley Rail service that we want to put in here. So the first step of that was to really look at the anticipated travel markets and figure out where we want to run the trains. We have some options in the Northern California mega region where we have lots of different rail lines we could run on. So the idea was, where do we provide service where people want to go? So obviously the first market that would be served is the local and regional market within the North Valley. So the new stations that would put in for North Valley would have some ridership within that area. Also, interregional travel will be very strong, especially with the Sacramento region being in close proximity. We see that as a very, very strong market for the North Valley, obviously. And then you're looking south of Sacramento, you got San Joaquin Valley with, direct service plus connections to other rail services. And even beyond this San Joaquin Valley, you could get to Southern California with some bus connections in the planning horizon that we're looking at around 2030 or so. And of course, the Bay Area, we're looking at providing a couple different access points to the Bay Area. That's obviously a very good market in terms of jobs and many destinations that people want to go to. So, so we really looked at that, and that's kind of the foundation of how we want to lay out our service plan. Also, in addition to the locations we would like to serve is the trip purpose. And so while some rail systems mainly have one kind of trip purpose, you have many systems that just are commuter rail, or you have other systems that run intercity rail for business and leisure travel. We feel that we have a plan that can actually serve all 3 of those types of trips. So in terms of commuting, obviously the Sacramento, this is very well positioned for a good service, a commute service to Sacramento. With the jobs there in the close proximity, and even to a lesser extent to the Bay Area with the post-pandemic era we live in, there could be some occasional commuting. It is a longer travel time, so you're not going to see a lot of commuting to the Bay Area, but however, there could be some of that. In terms of business travel, we see that being, points throughout the Northern California mega region with this plan. We see business travel throughout the whole region, as the same with leisure and non-business travel. So based on those markets and trip types, we then decided, okay, well, how do we lay out this service? So first off, we had to decide how much service was realistic to provide in the time frame we're looking at. A previous slide, please. I just want to continue with that one diagram. Thank you. We worked with Union Pacific and the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission and San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, and through all those partnerships, you know, it was decided what made sense in the next 10 years or so and what was feasible in terms of what UP could accept and also what was acceptable in terms of cost was a 4 daily round trip service initially, which we're calling the initial starter service. So this plan is focused on that initial starter service. And so this diagram shows the 4 round trips in the kind of the darker lines. So you can see, I'll just quickly go through these routes. The first route would be from Chico, running all the way down to the Union City BART station with a connection to BART there, which would provide access to the South Bay and also to the Silicon Valley. And then also we have another route that would run from Chico to Stockton, where there would be a very efficient transfer to the Amtrak San Joaquin service to provide folks a way to get to Oakland and connections to BART in Richmond, which can get folks to San Francisco and other parts of the northern Bay Area. And then finally, we have 2 round trips that would run from Chico to the planned Merced high-speed rail hub station. And so we feel really that should be a very strong market as well. And one train would run along the route that ACE is being extended along to Merced, and another route would run along the current Amtrak San Joaquin's route to Merced. So next slide, please. So in terms of this initial service, we have some details on that service. So I mentioned the 4 daily round trips. As part of this initial service, we would have 4 new stations in the North Valley. So you have Chico, Gridley, which would also be the kind of the connection point for folks coming from Oroville. And then you have Marysville, Yuba City, and then Plumas Lake. And then we would be tying into existing service that would be going to Natomas by 2030. So it would be an extension of that existing service. We also looked at some travel times from North Valley to the central Sacramento. We targeted on the Midtown Sacramento station, which is kind of the central Sacramento station. So Chico to Midtown would approximately be about 90-minute travel times. And then Marysville to Yuba City would be about a 48-minute, and Plumas Lake would be about a 40-minute travel time. So we think those travel times are really well positioned for that like Sacramento market. Now looking beyond, since the trains continue past the Sacramento region, we would look at, you know, travel times between Chico and Merced, that high-speed rail connection, to be about 3.5 hour service. And then Chico to that South Bay connection in Union City would be about a 4-hour train trip. So next slide, please. So obviously, this is an initial starter service. So we wanted to make sure as part of our planning work that we didn't preclude any future service increases. And also want to just kind of reflect some of the longer range goals that the state of California and others have for service to North Valley. So in the 2023 state rail plan, they do envision an hourly service between North Valley Rail and other destinations by 2050. So just keep in mind that the 4 round trips is really just the beginning of what can happen here in terms of service. Also being looked at is a potential service extension north of Chico, probably most likely up to Redding. And so one thing is we did as part of this project was to make sure the alignment we selected not only served the best markets, but also didn't preclude the ability to go further north to Chico. So we did select that alignment that would allow for any service going north. Next slide, please. Another thing that we did in terms of this project is to look at ridership forecasts. And so we look both at system-wide forecast as it relates to the North Valley Rail project and also station level detail for the North Valley Rail stations. So starting with the system-wide, essentially, if you don't install, the no build reflects a situation where you wouldn't have the North Valley trains extending north of that Natomas station in northern Sacramento. And that's about 5.3 million riders for the whole system. And that is already an expansion project with the Valley Rail that's being implemented now. However, if you add on the 4 round trips for from North Valley Rail and the 4 stations, you would increase ridership by approximately 500,000 annually for that service. So, and that would also translate into average daily ridership of about 1,400 riders. So we feel that's a pretty good indication that this has strong ridership for the North Valley Rail portion of the system. And also in terms of the stations, we calculate station ridership with the number of people that get on at the station or off at the station. So we call it ons and offs. So Chico would have approximately a little over 166,000 ons and offs. Gridley about 66,000 ons and offs. And then the highest ridership station we looked at was Marysville, Yuba City, about 179,000. And that's probably a reflection of their proximity being very close to the central Sacramento market and that commute market supporting the ridership there. And then also Plumas Lake would be just over 90,000 miles. That's a very rapidly, 90,000 riders, and that's a rapidly growing community. So just a reminder, we did do some refinements on the ridership since the initial draft, but we still seeing very strong ridership for the North Valley Rail program. And so next slide, please. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Daniel Hartman, who'll go over some of the stations and other infrastructure.
All right, thanks, Daniel. I'm just going to go through this fairly quickly. First slide here is showing the downtown Chico station site. The platform, initial platform as shown in light blue would be between 2nd Street and 5th Street. It would include closure of 3rd Street. Start with a single side platform, but the potential to expand to a second side platform if the service got extended north, and then some additional, parking throughout the area. Next slide.
Hey, Dan, could you hold just for a second?
Yeah.
One of our board members question.
Yeah, I do have a question regarding the really ridership. You mentioned that it's approximately 66,500. Does that include the community surrounding, really including Orville?
That'd be a question for Mr.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can someone repeat that a little louder? I was unable to hear that clearly.
The question was for the Gridley ridership at 66,000, does that include the surrounding area of Orville, or is that just Gridley?
Yeah, so there's an envisioned connection point, from Orville, like, looking at increased bus service and have a park and ride, obviously. So that would include the Orville ridership market.
Thank you.
All right. So this is a bird's eye simulation of the station at downtown with the single side platform. It shows the train stopped there. And the architecture of this is matching the Valley Rail program. And additionally, I just wanted to make everybody aware that this station would include adding a second track through this area to allow for freight trains to get around a passenger train. Next slide. This is a simulation from on the platform here, with the shelters shown on the right and the train on the left. Next slide. Okay, this is the Barber Yard option for the Chico station. Again, a single side platform as a temporary for the end of the line station. A possible future side platform shown in pink for if it gets extended. And then the parking and the bus is just a little bit off to the right of the platform itself in an area that we've kind of coordinated with the Barber Yard developer as opportunities to use for the parking and kiss and ride and bus area. Next slide.
That from the east side to the west, what is the nearest cross?
What was the question?
So this is on, we're looking, the pink is the west side, correct?
Yes, yeah, the pink is the west side. It is still isolated in the UP right of way there. We would have a pedestrian bridge to get across over to the main east side.
If I could just jump in real quick. This is located to the existing UP tracks. Is that?
No, I'm asking where, so if you were in a vehicle, where where you would be accessing
Right.
the Barber Station from.
I think like 16th, is shown coming, kind of to the other side of the ball field, and that left over. Yeah, I think there's still some things to figure out in terms of this types of details. 16th for sure would be one option for getting.
All right.
I was pointing out that we're carrying both Chico Station options forward through the environmental process. That would be both environmentally cleared.
Okay. Next slide. This is a simulation from the turnaround of the Kiss and Ride area, looking past the bus turnaround on the right, and straight ahead is the platform and the train sitting at the station, and then the plaza way working its way from the parking facilities towards the station. And then the next slide is just a zoom in of the station platform area. Again, this is just the simulation for the near-term single-side platform. Next is Gridley Station. Again, we would need an additional track to get around here, but in this location, because it's not the end of the line station, it would be a center platform. It would include elevators and stairs on both sides, the platform and the station side, with a pedestrian bridge going across one track. And then we've got some parking and bus drop off and kiss and ride. Next slide. This is a simulation from the southern parking area, looking across the bus drop off to the island platform, and you can see the elevators and stairs and the architecture envisioned for the Valley Rail program. This is the Marysville Yuba City Station. We are carrying multiple site locations, but also multiple platform configurations. We are potentially looking at doing a single side platform here, as long as we have no need for passing due to the complexity of building the station here on the levee. But this shows the single side platform with the parking area. We would have to be working with the shopping center here to utilize some space for the parking area. This is up on an embankment, so it would require ramps and stairs to kind of get down to the parking level. Next slide. This is a little bit of a farther back shot of the single side platform. You can kind of see the ramping down just to the right of the shelters there. And then the next slide will show a zoom in of the shelters, and you can kind of see that this is up on an embankment above the shopping center. Next slide. This is the southern option for the Marysville Yuba City site. Again, would look at multiple platform options. This would be the single side platform, and it's right up against the existing rail. There are already 2 tracks in this location, but the parking would need to be evaluated more in the next phase, but is shown kind of here in the blue area for parking and other drop-offs like bus and kiss and ride. Plumas Lake Station, again, center platform configuration, and it would require a new second track along this section. We'd have access from the Plumas Lake Boulevard interchange here for the Highway 73 way. Envision that this is going to be extended across the rail, so that would then provide much better access over to the west, but we would also have access out onto Algodon Road. This includes parking, bus drop off, keeping the parking for the recreational vehicle, improving the connection to the recreational path, including making sure that that vehicles can get out from there, as this is kind of an emergency access for residences to the south of this area. We also have the potential in this area to have some TOD, as shown in the yellow areas. Next slide. This is a zoomed out view of the parking. Also on this option, I didn't key on it, the pedestrian access to the center platform would be via a tunnel because the tracks are elevated a little bit from the ground. So it makes it easier to go down and under at this point. And so you can then see the center platform. And then if you go to the next one, we have a zoom in view of that tunnel portal, which is designed to be quite open and airy, and just get you over to the access on the center platform, which as soon as you get over to that side, it's open up into the air. So next slide. This is at the currently planned end of the line station for the Valley Rail program at Natomas. It's currently being implemented as a single side platform as the end of the line, but would be required to add the other side of the platform and some parking expansion to go north for the Valley Rail, for the North Valley program. So going into the costs a little bit. So initially what we're looking at is the cost for the stations to build the 4 new stations plus the expansion of the Natomas. Year of expenditure is in the $200 to $210 million range. The track improvements that we talked about right in the station vicinity, which would be required in order to have those stations, are in the neighborhood of 31 to 33 million. And then the layover facility up in Chico is around $40 million. We also have potentially corridor improvements along the alignment that UP would require to provide the capacity needed to add passenger service. Those are typically new passing sidings or lengthened, extending the existing sidings. One of those options is to, build all of these as an upfront capital improvement, which would be in the neighborhood of $230 to $240 million. But we also have a potential to work with UP to, instead of building all of these capital improvements for the sidings, having a reduced capital improvement that would then allow us to do a capital access fee, which would be an annual fee paid to UP, which would give them the ability to make improvements at other locations in their system that would free up the capacity here. So we're looking at that as the project moves forward to potentially help reduce the initial construction cost of the project. Next slide. All right.
Thanks, Daniel. So just in terms of next steps on the project, obviously we're going to be developing the final strategic plan, and we expect to bring that to the board of directors here next month at the May meeting, incorporating any additional comments that we receive. And then following that, the next step's going to be for the next coming months, we expect to develop what's called a preliminary environmental analysis report, or a PER. This will kind of be in preparation for the environmental document and preliminary engineering phase. We'll be coordinating, with project development team, Caltrans, UP, our partners at SJRRC and SJJPA to develop that. We'll continue to provide updates on the website, send out email notifications with our distribution list to keep people apprised as we move into kind of the next phase beyond this initial step of developing the strategy. And then, BCAG staff will continue to participate on the San Joaquin Valley Rail Committee, which provides direct input into the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority Board of Directors. Tom Clark, former director, did for a number of years, and Andy and I are going to be filling in behind him on that. So, you know, in terms of like initiating work on the environmental and preliminary engineering, we'd initially kind of hoped to get that going this spring, but there's been a few factors that are pushing that back some. That's kind of why we're going to start work on this air document, sort of in the near term. And part of what's at play is Union Pacific Railroad staff is stretched a bit thin right now. They're having to coordinate with the Valley Rail project and all the different construction projects that are nearing initiation. We're also coordinating with the Capital Corridor, passenger rail service as well on some expansion projects that they have. And it's sort of not a good time for us to jump in, start coordinating with UP on an environmental document because they need to be very involved in that work. Coordination with them, be reviewing all the key assumptions, and we'd need them to do modeling work. And so, in having discussions with UP and our partners at SJJPA, we've determined that, you know, we're going to hold off on moving that forward this spring, work on this pair document, which will give us a good head start on the environmental document down the road. And, you know, I think we'll have more clarity on the schedule for the environmental doc initiation, probably this summer. We have some more meetings with UP, SJJPA. And then really another factor is we'd hope to use our SB 125 funds, which include those TIRCIP formula funds, to fund the development of the environmental doc and preliminary engineering. And with the state budget situation, it's looking like those funds are probably going to be delayed, be distributed to various agencies until at least sometime in 2025. So anyway, I think it's, you know, we think it's a good strategy to get this work done on this fair document, and we need to figure out when's that best time to start that environmental work. We'll continue to keep the board apprised of that. So that's all we had for the presentation, and happy to answer any questions. And since we can't open a formal public hearing because we don't have a quorum, we can sort of turn it over to any additional questions from.
Question, and I realize, you know, we're deep into this for the commuter rail service, but the discussions with Union Pacific, do they have any interest at all at bringing back passenger rail service through the Highway 70 or the Feather River Canyon route? Used to have a passenger rail service. I used to ride that to Sacramento all the time, and it went all the way through to Quincy and added that. Is there any interest in that at all from them?
I mean, from UP, I don't know. I mean, you know, they're kind of focused on their rail services, freight rail services. You know, they would probably be willing to have discussions and do some coordination like that was brought forth. But, you know, we did kind of look at the two routes of going to Oroville versus going to Chico, part of this study. And because the passenger trains can, you know, go on that corridor to Chico, it's such a bigger market, provides the expansion to Red Bluff and Reading down the road. That was kind of selected as the option, but there's nothing to stop, I think, you know, at some point, you know, reaching out and trying to do some coordination if there was some interest on that.
Well, and UP does have the Feather River route is the lowest altitude route through the Sierra Nevada, so it's where all the tonnage goes through Oroville, through the canyon, and that's just the freight rail. That's primary purpose for that. So I was just curious if they're interested in ever returning passenger rail service through that route, because it is a shortening. And given the propensity of our current airplanes losing wheels and whatnot, it might be a more desirable way to go.
True enough. True enough.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Do we have public comment?
From Chico State to Rockwell. In order to facilitate Chico's future of true multi-modality, occupying surface real estate, surface parking is unacceptable. These adjacent lots are the best locations for future high-density housing to support a car-free future residency. Continuing with Steve Rockwell. Given the extreme need for housing in the Chico market, it is essential to reserve every possible development opportunity in this site for development. Additionally, the proximity of the Barber Yard site, existing downtown infrastructure coupled with the new traffic patterns through existing residential neighborhoods for access make this a bad choice. The need for a layover service and staging location in Chico creates a wonderful synergistic opportunity to create a secondary true rail line terminus at the Chico Airport. The trunk line extension and could conveniently make use of existing mud Sycamore Creek levee, allowing development of the complete underutilized airport property. The terminus could provide a second station opportunity for Chico, whose population is estimated to grow 50% by the time the project is operational. Given current plans to reestablish a commuter air service direct from Chico to LA, this opportunity for future statewide connectivity should not be overlooked. The layover facility could provide a true transportation hub serving the entire North State with parking, transit hub, and car rental facility. Keeping long-term parking here helps keep Chico more car-free. Thank you. Are there any speakers, comments?
There's a hand raised.
Really quick, the fare is, you said it was, $25 to $35. Is that a round trip or one way? Thank you.
Sir, your hand's raised. Did you have something else to add?
Yes, good morning. This is Gary Bradford, Yuba County Supervisor, representing the Plumas Lake and Wheatland areas, and I also serve as Yuba County's representative onto the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Board of Directors. And I just wanted to say that many of my colleagues in the Yuba Sutter area, as well as many community members, are very supportive of this project, and I greatly appreciate BCAG's leadership and the efforts from the San Joaquin Valley Rail Authority on this effort. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Bradford. And then this one? Yeah.
I'd be on the list too.
If you would like to speak first, Addison.
Yes, so we'll, on the other. Are we, so we're gonna go ahead and have this, we're gonna call it the public hearing. It's not really official, but we're ready. Well, all of our comments have come through on the Zoom meeting. So now let's transition to the public hearing process. Addison, do you want to be the first person up?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
As long as we make sure we got everyone's name who speaks, if you would, please do come to the podium if you, everyone here.
Thank you. Addison Winslow, District 4 Chico City Council member. Happy to be here. This project seems like a godsend to us, and I think there's a lot of feeling that this is up to powers beyond our control. And it's true that this is a project run by the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, and we don't have any formal representation on their board. We do have BCAG leading this strategic plan study. And this strategic plan is looking at the whole operational side, which is very interesting, amazing. We have a lot to work out. There's a whole other side of actually like delivering the project and getting the funding for it. And I think that's something that we ought to have a focus on. I'm really glad that there's a Yuba County supervisor here representing Yuba County and SACOG, because I think that the jurisdictions that are being served by this need to be working collaboratively in order to pursue the grant funding. And there are things we can do. For example, Chico has a pending application for the Pro Housing Designation Program from HCD, which gets you points on grant programs from the state, like the Rail and Capital Improvement Program. We can use to fund these things. So I think we need to be able to look in the whole strategic side of having complementary land use patterns around the proposed stations, having local transit connections to those stations to make sure that we're planning for maximum ridership, and we're planning in such a way that the state is going to be more interested in federal government in funding this project going forward. We lack any body to coordinate between Yuba and Sutter counties and Butte County here, in addition to all the individual jurisdictions involved. They're part of SACOG in the Sacramento area, even the North State Super Region, where we do have a North State working group body for coordinating transportation. Yuba and Sutter counties are not part of it. So I think that I really appreciate Supervisor Bradford for being here, and I think that we all ought to have an opportunity to discuss ways that we can jointly pursue funding and check all the boxes we can in order to make that funding happen. I think that Gridley, Oroville, Paradise, Marysville should be looking into pro-housing designations as well, so that we can line up what we can and actually deliver this project in the time frame that we're looking at, or even faster than that, and make sure that our area is connected in the future metropolitan rail network.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
You expressed something about the San Joaquin Valley Rail Authority and representation on that board.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that was created by, I want to say, like a 2014 state legislation. It says that each county within the rail service area has representation on the board. You can interpret that to the actual rail service area or the planned, and I think that the decision of is that it's the actual rail service. So we wouldn't have representation on that board until we have a rail service operational. So that's kind of like the issue there, is that how do we be sure that resources are being utilized to make sure we do get rail service if we don't have any say in it before then. I think we'll have some words on this later. They have a rail commission that recently John Clark was a member of. He's retired since, and so we should have some succeeding representation. But I think the one issue there is that since we don't have any representation on the board, sometimes decisions can be made without really the best interest for our area in mind. Connection to the Capital Corridor, to the Bay Area, is one kind of glaring example of that. The other is that because we don't have representation, we lack any form of coordination between the parties involved in the North State in this rail project or others, such as the Route 3 bus service to Sacramento, again, later in the agenda. But and so it looks like without a change in state legislation, we would not be able to get formal representation until the rail is operational. We could request something like observer status, or make at least sure that there's a liaison from my area there. Staff is one thing. Staff has their own purview and everything. I think it's important that elected officials be involved in this too, because we have the mandate to look more broadly and represent the interests of our areas.
Yeah, my name is John Hofland from Reading. Yeah, I rode the train down this morning. It was a nice adventure. I have a 2-minute history of electric passenger trains and electric freight trains in Butte and Glenn counties. 117 years ago, Butte and Glenn counties had electric trains powered by clean, zero-emission, green, renewable, net zero hydroelectric power, PG&E. These trains ran all the way from Hamilton City to Chico and San Francisco through Sacramento and Walnut Creek. If the BCAG has trouble operating on the UP Pacific Line track, I'd suggest using the Sacramento Northern right-of-way. Okay, now I have some issues with the strategic plan. The need is immediate. Trains are sold out. This is the Coast Starlight, which I rode this morning, especially between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We are being denied transportation. The need is immediate for interstate trains from Sacramento to Eugene, Oregon. But the planned train fare is much more expensive than the Yuba Sutter Transit, $2.25 bus ticket from Marysville to downtown Sacramento. I'm a senior, so I paid $2.25. And as far as your supervisor from Yuba County, and my previous comment about the city of Live Oak has a population greater than Gridley or Plumas Lake. The city of Live Oak is not planned to be a stop for the BCAG train. The city of Live Oak is not included in the draft North Valley Passenger Rail Strategic Plan for feeder bus connections. Plumas Lake is not even an incorporated city. The city of Live Oak is thousands more in population than Gridley or Plumas Lake. So my next comment, why isn't the beautiful Marysville train station, this historic, beautiful train station, going to be utilized? It provides indoor protection, waiting room, and toilets. I don't see any of those platforms that have waiting room or indoor protection, or maybe restrooms, toilets. And going to Shasta County, this is part of your plan, it was included as a comment in your plan. Shasta County has no plan to provide connection to BCAG trains. BCAG must plan for connection to points north of Chico, including Red Bluff, Redding, and Wairika. This was included in your 1990s BCAG Northern California Rail Plan, which I went to the public hearings when you had your BCAG meetings in Oroville. Also, three more comments. Track condition between Sacramento and Chico is appalling. I've written that Coast Starlight. It's appalling. The immediate need is for total reconstruction of the roadbed and tracks. And Union Pacific price per mile for total reconstruction is from the ground up is $550,000. That was the last figure I received from Union Pacific. Then there's also a mention in the California State Rail Plan about zero emissions. And zero emission catenary, which are overhead power lines, the power electric trains, should be constructed. The plan for hydrogen trains and the purchase of hydrogen trains are tremendously expensive, with hydrogen at $36 per kilogram. It just went up from 25 to 36 and set to increase in cost. And my last comment, and I'll end it, I appreciate being able to come down here and make these comments. I really appreciate Duke County for being so progressive in your plans. High-speed rail should be constructed from Sacramento to Chico and Eugene, Oregon. Thank you very much.
Or comments for anybody that?
Good morning. My name is John Fleming. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for Ampla Health, and pleasantly surprised to see a former board member of Ampla Health on Hell here. And I recognize some of the others of you on other committees and boards, particularly in Butte County and the Chico area. And I'd like to echo Supervisor Bradford in that Ampla Health is 100% on board and excited about the prospect of commuter rail. We think it's having alternate forms of commute opportunities, in addition to buses and vehicles is extremely important for our region, and we are fully 100% supportive. I've had discussions with staff that I probably don't need to rehash about option number one, which is shown for the Marysville, Yuba City area. Some of the concerns that we have is we're one of the primary property owners in that shopping center. There's a 65,000 square foot building that's called the Cannery, and it is immediately adjacent or near the proposed station. And there's also some considerable uses in that shopping center, which may not be as conducive for getting people on and off rail at that location as maybe option number two. So I had anticipated by today that one of those two alternatives would have been selected for logistical purposes, reasons, and probably financial considerations as well. And I guess we haven't quite gotten there. But Ampla Health would like to be at the table, or at least part of the conversation as you move forward and kind of making that decision, and have offered that to staff and any public hearings or meetings where we could be engaged or involved in that conversation or process. I'd like to offer myself for that purpose. So thank you so much for your time.
All right. I just wanted to, one quick question I had was, there's still this 30-minute-ish turnaround time that has to happen, correct? When it's at the end of the rail?
Yeah, it sort of depends on which station option we go with. If we go with the downtown Chico existing Amtrak station, I think it's a 15-minute turnaround where the train has to contact dispatch to get permission to go back the other direction. So, if we go with the Barber Yard, that might not be necessary. I'm going to ask Mr. Hartman, who has the expertise on this, to chime in.
Yeah, so for a train that is inbound with passengers, they do, you're right, it is, roughly a 15-minute turnaround time to get the permissions to operate the train in the opposite direction. it would be the same at both sites, but at the Barber Yard site, we're off of the main line, so it can technically sit there for those 15 minutes without really interrupting anything. At the downtown site, you know, it depending upon the train configuration and how close it is to those crossings, if it is fully clear of the crossings, they can be activated and you know, the gates could come up during that time, and then when it turns, you know, starts heading back, they'll close again. But for the train configurations that will foul, it will remain closed for that duration. It's just whether you're on the main line or off for those two different options. The reason why we're still evaluating a north layover option for that downtown site is because the train will come in, drop off passengers, and then immediately leave and completely clear out those at-grade crossings because it's traveling in the same direction as it's currently operating. For the trains that are starting out, it is possible for them to get simultaneous permissions to head into the station in one direction and then head back, and therefore the time to turn the train is much less. It just requires the conductor to go to the other end, get things situated. So that amount of time can be reduced significantly from that 15 minutes for the trains that are starting out to head south. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, yeah, the main question was, and if it's clear of crossing guards going up at the downtown location, obviously stopping traffic for 15 minutes.
Yeah, the issue is that the way that we have to set up the station and the platform with the ADA requirements and the fact that trains could have their locomotives in either direction, there are train configurations that would not be able to be clear of, say, 2nd Street or something. And so, you know, it's just a matter of the fact that we have multiple types of train equipments and they could be flip-flopped, that we just can't set it up to make sure 100% of the time that they are clear of the crossings.
Great, thank you so much for the explanation. That was more, we've heard this before, but just wanted the public to be aware of the differences and why looking at the two different locations. So I think that's all we can do today, and we will, Mr. Newsom's going to work on getting that item pushed with.
We'll bring this item back in May for the action portion.
All right, then we are adjourned.
We're gonna.
Oh, do you want to do the?
Yeah, we're gonna do the information items 8, 9, and 10.
Oh, okay. All right. Mobile ticketing and fare collection for Butte Regional Transit. Sarah.
At last month's board meeting, we were directed to bring forward some additional information regarding ticketing and fare collection. We were asked how much cash is collected on board the bus. Last fiscal year, 22-23, on board cash collection accounted for about 19% of total fares collected. Another question was, are there any impacts to fare box recovery by removing cash collection on the bus? After consulting with multiple agencies, we do not believe that to fare box recovery per passenger service. What is the annual cost for operating and maintaining GenFare fare boxes? Approximately $165,000 is spent every in labor, materials, and equipment for GenFare fare boxes. And the last question was, what is the timeline for removing cash collection? We understand that removing GenFare fare boxes require expanded options for cash customers. We're considering donation fare boxes on the bus through Diamond Manufacturing, coordination with local retailers where tickets could be purchased in cash, smart cards, etc. Additionally, we would still accept cash at the Chico Transit Center, BCAG offices, the County Public Works, and Paradise Town Hall. Incorporating a more robust mobile ticketing system is estimated to reduce hardware, software, staffing costs by approximately 30%, depending on the select vendor. Staff plans to heavily market the improved mobile ticketing system once a vendor is selected. Staff plans to bring an item to the board in May to authorize the executive director to enter into an agreement with the preferred mobile ticketing vendor.
I just want to do a little bit of a follow-up with that. So one of the main questions that the board brought up, which has been a concern for ours, is what do you do about the people who not want those people? So we're I think we're changing our definition of what this effort is, really to try to find a more robust mobile ticketing system, at the same time expanding cash options available, with the goal of trying to reduce the amount of cash that is collected. So it really is, it's incumbent upon us to figure out, okay, can we find expanded options where cash can be used elsewhere? So that's kind of part of the process too, is we're changing a little bit about what we're asking this mobile to do. It's not just finding a way to remove fare boxes that are on the buses, but also to investigate, well, let's see if we can make cash use more available and more broad so that you have those options. And then at the same time. So, yeah, if you go into a store like a CVS, Friday, Walmart, you can establish a relationship with vendors that will allow people to go in and through a process, get that QR code, exchange cash for a QR code, so that essentially you can get a ticket to ride the bus on your phone or as a ticket, and be able to come to the bus and say, okay, here's my code that I got at Walmart or CVS or Walgreens or a participating vendor, and the validator will accept it, or you have a ticket, the driver will be able to accept too. So that's a much more simpler version of probably what really has to happen in order to make that first. So we want to look into that, and people do it. It does happen, but it involves a broader look at what does that really mean in terms of establishing a relationship with a company that does that type of a service, and then ultimately, what does that mean for the person that walks in the front door to, say, a Walgreens who wants to buy a bus ticket? What's the process of actually doing that? You go to in a line, you go through like a regular customer would, and then at the other side has to be aware that you're not buying products from Walgreens, you're just there to buy a ticket. So there's those kind of details that we really need to look into. And as we look into those, we'll keep the fare boxes, so we'll still keep the current system collecting cash. It's going to take a. So last thing we want to do is leave anyone who uses cash, particularly the elderly. They're more comfortable using that, because we don't want to leave those folks high and dry. And then, of course, the ultimate fallback is the donation box. So people, if they can't figure out how to go get a ticket elsewhere, or haven't really learned where those places are yet, show up at the bus. I couldn't get it. I couldn't get a ticket. I wasn't really sure how to do that, but I've got some cash for the donation. We're going to try to do this really slowly and carefully, so it's not just.
Thank you. Thank you. I do. Go ahead. So is there going to be availability that they can go into one of these locations that's listed and just buy a several package pass? So in other words, like they could buy, I don't know how it would look, but maybe a debit card that has so many passes on it. They can just load that and then swipe the QR code.
Maybe. I mean, if that's a functionality that the relationship with that vendor would provide at that location, then yes. Probably the more likely location would be if you had how to use the app. The other part of it too is for us to look at our tickets, what we sell, the type of ride that we sell, multiple variations of rides, single. We do need to consolidate that too. So that would be beneficial to be able for a person to go in and say, well, I want to buy 10 rides while I'm here.
I gotta mention, I just took a flight and, the plane went out of service, and so they put us up for the night, and they gave us 2 QR code meal tickets on our phones. That seemed to be a real easy way to do things. Just mentioned, I didn't realize it was even available, but up on my phone, I showed the QR, and it could be used anywhere. It didn't have to be used at an airport. It was like a credit card debit.
Yeah.
So service is already available and running rapidly around. An interesting way that we'll never be without our phones again in the future, I think.
I think our biggest challenge is gonna be going to centers and homes and where people rely on public transport. We don't use the dial-a-ride services, we do use fixed. We have to find those people, those folks, and see what the options are.
And maybe the senior centers would be a place that we can partner for these kiosks for them to buy tickets and things like that.
All right. Butte Regional Transit 2024-2025 draft service plan and budget. Sarah again.
Draft 24-25 B-line budget identifies a total operating budget of approximately $13 million for both fixed route and paratransit services. Draft budget is approximately $1.2 million higher than the prior year, an increase of about 10%. Some notable changes to the operating budget include increases to fleet facility insurance and purchase transportation. This is accounting for the new TransDev option years amendment. Upon approval of this final budget by the BCAG board at next month's meeting, we'll execute an amendment to the TransDev contract for 2 option years through June 30th, 2026. There's also an increase in printing and signage to prepare a marketing plan and marketing materials, kind of previous item that we just discussed, being market our new services, mobile ticketing, zero emission technology. 200,000 of that, which would be paid through a grant by Caltrans, called the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, or LCTOP. On fares, the draft budget shows approximately an 11% increase compared to the previous year's budget. And on the capital budget, we did purchase 5 battery electric buses through BCAG. They are expected to be delivered next fall in 2025. Charging equipment for those buses will also be delivered a couple months before the buses arrive, so that we can commission them and make sure that they're functioning appropriately. And 6 smaller diesel buses with capacity for about 24 passengers are scheduled to be arriving this summer. We also are expecting that 4 paratransit vans will be delivered next. As I mentioned, we'll be bringing back the final budget at next month's.
Comments or questions? All right, and last one, San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority coordination on Route 3, throwaway bus, Chris?
Thank you. Yeah, at last month's meeting, it was requested that a future agenda item be brought back to the BCAG board to discuss the possibility of providing letters to the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, JPA, regarding bus-only ticketing, Route 3 through, and also possibly requesting a seat from the BCAG region on that SJJPA board. So we've since followed up with SJJPA staff, also Council Member Winslow. We actually had a nice little Zoom meeting and kind of discussed these topics. And we also have Michael Hannabit from SJJPA joining us to answer any questions. But from these conversations that we've had, we've learned that regarding the SJJPA Board of Directors, when it came up earlier, legislation that created the SJJPA sort of defines that board composition. Typically, board members are added as that passenger rail service expands to new areas. So, our region can expect to have a seat on the board at that time that, the service implementation here. We typically can't otherwise just appoint board members without that process. And this has happened over time as the service has expanded. They've added new board members like the Contra Costa County and other areas such as that. So, because of that, at this time, staff, we're not recommending sending that letter. It is, again, up to the board's direction, BCAG staff, as to what you think is best. And then sort of the second item was regarding the Amtrak Route 3 throughway bus. And through that coordination that we had, SJJPA staff did indicate that it would help them sort of move forward with bus-only ticketing if we, BCAG board, were to send a letter to the SJJPA board of directors. Sort of one indicating that, you know, BCAG has looked at taking over Route 3 at this time, isn't interested in doing so. And then two, that would encourage the SJJPA board of directors to move forward with providing bus-only ticketing on that route, following the processes outlined in Senate Bill 742, which sort of outlines a process that SJJPA would walk through in order to open that up. And so we are recommending as staff that staff bring back a letter probably at the next meeting that BCAG board to consider approving to send to the SJJPA board of directors. Happy to answer any questions or. I'm not sure if, I mean, if we don't have a quorum, can the board still just provide direction to staff? It's not an action.
But what I was thinking we could do is, because we don't have a quorum and it wouldn't necessarily be a board action, we could send a letter making these two recommendations from me, and if the existing board here is okay with us sending a letter saying we are not in the ability to take over Route 3 and for them to go ahead and move forward. If you guys are all in agreement, then you have the letter come from me. And if the board down there says they need something more, why then we'll bring it. You guys are okay with it?
Can you reiterate again, I'm sorry, regarding the position on the JPA, can you speak more to that?
Yeah, so representation on the JPA it involves, there are a lot of people, obviously, in the area of where a good portion of this rail work is happening. So a lot of the Sacramento area, Bay Area, and Southern Valley. So there are people in those jurisdictions on that board that are engaged in talking about the projects that are being moved forward in the region and are tying a lot of these elements together. As it stands right now, our pursuit of the North Valley project, it's a piece of the whole big picture, really. But we really are in the beginning stages where a lot of the projects that are in the hopper down there are farther along. Some of them are into or under construction, farther along than ours. So us having a person on the board, I don't feel it's really necessary for us to do that right now, because we have a pretty good relationship with the staff at SJJPA and the Rail Commission. We're all kind of on the same page about the timeline and moving this particular project forward. Significant funding we need isn't going to be available. Maybe another year at least. It will be available, but it's not available in the time frame that we thought. So what I didn't want to do was recommend to the board that we put, someone, it's another commitment of time for a board member, if there's not a real great benefit given where we are in the process. So once we get down the road and we're actually developing the project, the environmental process and design, and we're talking about what the service is actually going to look like, how many people are going to utilize it, that might be the time that we think about interest of being on the board, their board, and participating in how our particular leg of this project fits into the big. So it could be beneficial, but it doesn't feel like it's out the right. That makes sense.
I'm guessing we're gonna have public comment on this particular item, but, yeah, I guess I see quite a bit of overlap, not just in terms of transportation, but in terms of our, we have air quality board, we sit in the same Sacramento air basin, and so we have the overlap there as well, and then all of the jurisdictions have their own climate action plans. So I see this as dovetailing very nicely with not just our region in Northern California, but also how this is gonna fit into kind of the larger plan on a statewide level. So,
Yeah, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn with the San Joaquin folks, and they're there. Michael's there, and he'll tell me if I'm going too far with this, but, the San Joaquins is one of, I think, 3 agencies, Michael, that do what you guys do throughout California.
Correct.
Looking to invest in developing regional services, not necessarily the high speed, but regional services that get to, areas and communities with a usable, functional rail service. So as our project comes forward, the other agencies like SAJPA that are doing similar types of things are gonna kind of be in the same position, expanding and tying together. So it does, I mean, it does fit in pretty well, I think, with the overall picture of what we're trying to accomplish within reason. To afford. And it seems like it would be a good time when our project becomes more concrete and developed to engage ourselves on what level and what board. We don't 100% know yet, but there could be some overlap between quality and other.
yeah. And I'm not questioning your judgment on this. It seems that we would have a better kind of idea of what's coming forward if we had a seat at the table.
Sure.
So that's
Yeah, if you guys, I mean, I think we should have a seat at the table. I think we might be a little premature, so what I wouldn't want to do is I wouldn't want to ask you guys to participate in something that is not quite developed to the point that would be of use to your time. But that's my opinion. If there's a feeling that you want to be engaged now, we can certainly talk with the board and.
If we have a member who is really engaged on this subject and would like to be part of that
Sure.
board, it would be nice, and maybe we can hear from Mr. Invest. It would be nice to be able to provide them a space that they can be there and have input and be able to report back to us too.
Yeah, whatever you guys are comfortable with doing,
I see you have your hand raised. I'm sorry, Kim, don't want to butcher your last name, Michael.
Yes, thank you, board, and I just wanted, Michael Hannabit with the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority and San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission. Just hoping to provide a little more context to the conversation as well. As Andy mentioned, we do have board members represent each county that we do serve with the rail service, and that is statutorily in our JPA legislation. And so what we would certainly invite when rail service comes up to Chico in the North Valley and Sacramento Valley, we would look to kind of amend that legislation at that time. The reason for that is we do also have a very extensive throughway bus network, as you're aware, with Route 3 up through Chico. We also have Route 7 along the 101 corridor and many others throughout the state in Southern California. And so if we, had any more representation on the board, it would be a little more difficult to certainly, gain a quorum and kind of do business at our board. So we keep it to our rail service area, and we'd certainly, look forward to expanding that, the board members at that time. And as Chris mentioned in the North Valley Rail presentation, we do have an active San Joaquin Valley Rail Committee, which is made up of, folks up and down the valley. It was kind of a precursor to our JPA and reports back to staff and our board on any sort of issues, whether they be service or planning related as well. So I know BCAG staff has had a role on that committee in the past, and we'd certainly look forward to have Chris or someone else from staff continue to be involved that way as well in a more official manner.
thank you so much. Appreciate the clarification and going into that a little deeper.
I do have a quick question. So, in your board meetings, I'm assuming they're open to the public, so if we had an elected official that wanted to come down and participate and at least, you know, learn about what's going on in the meeting prior to us being able to have a seat, would there be a problem with anything like that?
Yes, they are open public meetings. We frequently have, similar to many public meetings, both hearing items and information items, both at our San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority Board. Those are bi-monthly, and our Regional Rail Commission, which are monthly. Again, similar formats for those bodies. There has been discussion to this similar effect in the past, and we know there is interest, and so there will be a joint board meeting between our two boards. I think in July is what we're shooting for, and there'll be again more discussion on this topic at that time. And so we'd certainly invite any sort of kind of looking at our agendas coming up when this topic does arise again, and be happy to interface with staff and keep people up to speed as well.
I would just add too that, we're going to continue to participate on that committee. And I'm on the email distribution list for the board agendas. I see them every time they meet, hop on and Zoom as necessary. And so maybe over time as things come up, we could have some staff reports coming. Anything relevant that's going on with that board.
Right, any public comment?
Lots of comments.
Yeah.
John Holflick from Reading. I've been involved in this for decades. The real issue here is the establishing legislation that created the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. Before the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority existed, Caltrans operated what was Route 3 bus to Medford, Oregon, for example. And what we need is, I suggest that you support. I've been trying to get legislation as an amendment to that legislation to include our area from Sacramento north to Medford, so that we can have representation to show our needs here pertaining to mainly the bus service, but also trains. And that's what's needed. And I've been blocked from trying to get this legislation introduced in the legislature. That is the problem here. We need representation for our region. If you want to get these services to our region, we need representation. The San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority controls bus and rail service from Lancaster, California to Medford, Oregon. And the reason I say Medford is because Caltrans originally, like I said, operated bus service to Medford for a very short time. Thank you.
Hi. On the SJJPA representation item, I think it would be helpful to have an elected official designated as a liaison, at the very least. So somebody is at least watching the agendas. My experience having taken the bus, bought the ticket to Davis, ditched the train to go down to the meeting there and talk about Route 3 service, most of the participants were by Zoom anyway. So it doesn't require that you drive all the way down there just to keep abreast of what's going on. You can check the agendas. A lot of things really don't have to do with us when it's operating the rail in the San Joaquin Valley. On the Route 3 issue, so it's different legislation. 2019 SB 742 is what allowed funding to be provided to JPAs to provide bus-only service. So previously it was had to be connected to rail. That's the case in most of the cases. And so there's something unfortunate in that bill. It requires, they call it good faith effort at coordination with the private bus providers, which I guess means that Greyhound can kind of put their foot down and make it difficult for us to push through. What that requires, I think, is persistence. They're very protective over their route from Sacramento to Stockton. I think less so up here. But good faith effort of coordination means that we need to try to see if they will replace the routes to connect with the trains there. I would mention that the most commonly taken transit route, I'm sure from here, is to the Capital Corridor to go to the Bay Area. Right now, because the San Joaquin operates at not the Capital Corridor, there's a 2-hour layover in order to make that transfer to get to the Bay Area. So we're not really coordinating very well as it is. So it's hard to do much worse, I think, in taking over the route or allowing it to be operated without train connection. Overall, this is something that it's unfortunate the legislation happened this way, and perhaps we could push for an amendment. Shout out to Tasha from Senator Dolly's office who's here. That we should not be restricting access to available transit resources in order to protect the market of a private company. They should do better and be more competitive if they want to keep service on their routes. So last time I took a Greyhound, I'll say it was completely full from Sacramento to Chico. No, we all had to rearrange so people could sit next to their family because there were no seats left over. There's just one thing I want to emphasize, and so we all understand it, is it will require persistence, I think, in order to get this through. I would really hope that we can expedite this process and allow people to take the bus to Sacramento, because I think that will help grow the market, people in the habit of being able to take transit to Sacramento and otherwise, and this will support our ultimate efforts to have rail service through here. I just spoke to the director of Humboldt Transit Authority recently. They have gotten bus-only service from Arcata on that route there. However, something that they mentioned is, which I didn't know, is they're still not allowed to have intermediate drop-off in all the locations. So they won't allow you to take it from, you know, Arcata Ukiah or something like that. And I think that we need to make sure that that is included, because this is, as much as it's about Chico to Sacramento, this is about connecting Sutter County and Marysville to here, where currently we have no public transit options. As John mentioned to me earlier, Greyhound doesn't even stop in Marysville. So there's huge gaps there, and it's not gaps that we need to like have this like large scale thinking about providing infrastructure in order to service. There's already the buses running there right now. We're just not allowed to sit on them. Thanks.
Business from the floor. Anybody have comment from business?
The question that I just wanted to address or ask for some clarification on, going back to our rail plan information, can we get the answer to some of the questions that Mr. Housewife asked, particularly regarding the existing station in Marysville, and with that information for our next?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think at the next meeting, we'll be bringing the final plan. So as part of that, we can bring up the questions that were asked with answers. You're informed about that.
Thank you.
All right, I think if there's no items from the floor, then I think we are adjourned.